Time now to take a look at the Saturday papers. Here with me to review them are the journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown and the broadcaster and journalist Afia Hagan. Once again, good to see you back. Let's take a look at a story, Afia, that we discussed in the last hour because it has made had a lot of newspaper coverage, as you would imagine, and it's our lead story once again today. And this is the appalling aftermath of the floods, the dams bursting in Libya, and the terrible toll that's taken there. This is a story inside the I newspaper. This is page 19 of the I, and that headline is just, it says it all, doesn't it? It's just so shocking.
It's really, really grim, to be honest. So basically, residents and rescue workers are struggling to cope with the thousands of corpses that are washing up on the beaches there. Early estimations say 5,000 people dead. Thought it could be up to 20,000 people have died. People under the rubble, people washing up on beaches. People have been swept out to sea, and they're saying, don't bring us aid, bring us body bags. That's what we need, because the corpses that are lying underneath the rubble could spread disease. And basically, they need to be able to bury the dead properly and obviously with respect and dignity as well. But there's a humanitarian crisis that's unfolding here and will continue to unfold here. Survivors don't have access to clean water and medicine. But there's also corruption in the country. There's militia groups that will take advantage of the aid, that will stop it when it comes in, perhaps try and sell it to the highest bidder and try and control where it goes. And of course, like we said, Libya is hugely politically divided. One part of the government doesn't even have access to the city at all, and the other half of the government is trying to control it. So there's so many factors at play here that means that the humanitarian crisis that's going to unfold is going to be more than catastrophic.
And just heartbreak.
Yes, and actually there's a very important little comment by a Libyan journalist from Istanbul, where he is, and his friend who's lost everybody. His wife, his 8-month baby, his mom, his dad, his sister, his 2 brothers. But the last para is the most important one. And I do hope our media gets on to this, okay? That NATO, led by France and Britain, went into Libya, was it 2011? Yeah? They went in, they got rid of Gaddafi, and like with Iraq, there was no thought given to what would happen next. And ever since then, Libya had the highest standard of living at one point anywhere in Africa. Okay, it was a functioning country, whether you liked Gaddafi or not. And actually, the West loved Gaddafi for a very long time. And now we've come to this situation where there's not one nation. There's at least 2 and probably more, and there's militias like in Sudan. And we never take responsibility for these things. So I hope we move on to that. It's not casting blame, but I do think we need a sense of how one thing produces consequences that have never been thought about.
We need to take definitely some sort of responsibility, because if you leave a power vacuum, I mean, whether we liked Gaddafi or not, at the end of the day, Yasmin's 100% correct. Libya was a functioning country. We may not like the politics, but it's not always our job to march in and say, we don't really like you. If you don't do it our way, don't do it at all. You leave a power vacuum, and what happens is you have bad governance, and you have bad governance, you don't have proper infrastructure, you're not looking after your people, and when a natural disaster comes along, it's a sum of all parts. This is what happens, and this is where we're left. And now it's going to be that we have to go in with aid. If we hadn't gone in the first place, I'm not saying we couldn't prevent a storm, but perhaps things wouldn't be so bad for the people that are left behind.
Okay, well, it's going to prompt so many debates, isn't it? Not just about the rights and wrongs of that particular action, but also what happens now. And in the meantime, as you say, a desperate humanitarian crisis there. Let's move on to another story that's on a lot of the front pages. This is the story of the ban on XL bully dogs. The Sun picks this up on its front page and inside as well, doesn't it, Yasmin?
Yes, and you know, it's so tragic. It's absolutely so tragic. You know, they attacked this man who's, you know, absolutely just doing what he was doing. Imagine being mauled to death. Imagine that death. You know, in a civilized country. So something's got to be done. And this is not the only breed. We've got a lot of breeds in this country. where we've had this kind of thing happen before. And you can ban dogs and you can do what you do, but actually there needs to be a really serious look at protecting citizens.
Well, yeah, and so this has prompted a debate, hasn't it? And the double-page spread inside The Sun is heartbreaking. The headline inside says he died saving Mum, protecting his mother after these dogs got into his garden. Rishi Sunak has come out and said that XL bully dogs will be banned. There's still some questions about how that's going to be phased in, a suggestion there'll be some kind of amnesty for a couple of years. But do you think that's the answer, banning certain breeds? Because some of the owners would say it's how you look after them, it's not the breed themselves. Others say that the breed is inherently dangerous. And what effect could a ban have, do you think?
I think you do have to ban certain breeds, unfortunately. I think some of them in their DNA are fighting dogs, are killing dogs, or bred as wild dogs, and they're not supposed to be kept as pets. And I think actually we just have to accept that. Obviously, good ownership, looking after your dog, making sure it's on a lead or muzzled in certain situations is also very important. You know, we used to have licenses for dogs back in the 80s. Maybe it's something that we need to bring back, that people actually need to have a license to have a dog, to make sure that you're looking after it properly and doing all the things you should be doing to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen. We also need to make sure that when this does happen, I mean, this poor man and his family, my heart goes out to them, but we also have to make sure that this owner is prosecuted, actually, because you weren't looking after the dogs properly. Why did they escape into his mum's garden? He shouldn't have had to be in that position where him and someone else, actually, a neighbour got involved, we don't know if he was injured either, tried to fend them off. Look what happened with that 11-year-old girl in Birmingham earlier on in the week. She was lucky she got away with a couple of bites because people intervened, but it could have been much worse for her as well.
OK, let's move on to another story that is making headlines. This is the Daily Telegraph's own story. They are saying that Rishi Sunak had drafted a resignation letter or a statement on the day that he was fined by police over Partygate, and that he was persuaded not to. So what are they
So they're saying that it was Rupert Murdoch and his a team of influencers, let's call them, who,
executives working for him is how they
influencers persuaded him not to. Now, this is very interesting because a lot of people have said over and over and over again that our press, our politics is controlled by owners of the press, you know, various newspapers, almost all of them who live elsewhere.
Do you think that's still true?
It's absolutely true. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that they exert a huge amount of, you know, the Telegraph is owned by the Barclay brothers, who do not pay taxes here, live on some island, I can't even remember where. They exert a huge, and Starmer's already in the net. He's already in the net. Blair was absolutely in the net. So it tells you something about our democracy, I think.
We are actually out of time. I'm just going to pull out what the Downing Street spokesman said. He said Mr. Sunak and Mr. Murdoch didn't talk that day, declined to comment on other conversations which allegedly took place. But maybe we'll revisit that story. But we are out of time now. Thank you both. See you in an hour's time.